Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:06. It's O'Connor and Company. It's America's morning show, the most influential morning radio program in the country.
You bet
and you're
it
listening
is.
to it right here on WMAL in Washington, D.C. Coming up in 30 minutes, we've got the governor of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin, who just purged a lot of dead people and non-citizens off the voter rolls in Virginia. Boy, where was Ralph Northam on that one? 8:05, KT McFarland will join us. And the 8:35, our buddy John Andrasik, Five for Fighting. We'll talk about his concert coming up next week, and we'll probably get into some politics with him, too. That's all coming up on Larry O'Connor with Patrice Unwuka. Good morning, Patrice.
Good morning, Larry.
And when I am president, it will be a day one priority to fight to bring down prices. I will take on big corporations that engage in illegal price gouging. I will take on corporate landlords that unfairly raise rents on working families. I will take on big pharma and cap the cost of prescription drugs for all Americans.
Kamala Harris saying that things are way too expensive, and on day one when she's president, when she finally has responsibility, when she and her party finally take power in the White House, then they'll do so. Wait a second. Wait.
They're already
Someone should probably
in
let her
office.
know. Is she running against Joe Biden right now? All right, joining us is Brent Bozell, president and founder of Media Research Center. See, it's that kind of thing that, she's being applauded and praised, and there's no real scrutiny going on, if I may suggest, Brent Bozell, in the corporate media.
It kind of reminds me of Joe Biden running against Barack Obama for 8 years. His whole campaign theme in 2020 was how much life sucked under his predecessor and how much better he was going to do. And all he did was double down on government spending to spend for every kind of game and gimmick that anybody could come up with in Washington, D.C., whether it's Build Back Better, $2 trillion, economic recovery programs that didn't work, $1 trillion here, $1 trillion here. And now you're listening to Kamala Harris. Everything sucks. And if I'm elected president, I'm declaring war on everybody. That just means she's going to spend more money. That's all it means. And by the way, that terrible pharma organization, today is a direct consequence of Obamacare. Pharma is a horrific association, but they got a seat at the table under Obamacare, and Obama allowed them to do what they're doing because of Obamacare. So for them to come out now and suddenly suggest that pharma is a terrible entity, that is just intellectually dishonest.
Yeah, but you won't hear that kind of fact-checking or analysis anywhere in corporate media. In fact, the love fest goes on, and it's understandable why they love this ticket so much, Brent, because this is probably the most extreme, radical, left-wing presidential ticket than we've ever seen. Usually, when you got a radical like Barack Obama, he likes to offset it with your so-called moderate Joe Biden. And Biden, of course, picked his radical Kamala Harris. But boy, oh boy, this is something terrifying if you're a conservative, the thought of these two gaining power together.
Or if you're a liberal. Now, I'm listening to the media talking about this fellow Waltz and what a moderate and a centrist he is. Typical is Jonathan Karl from ABC, who says he does have a record in Congress as a very moderate Democrat. He had a pretty moderate record. He was viewed as a moderate. He will have a more personal connection to some of those moderate voters. He has a proven ability to do well with rural, moderate, even conservative voters. All that in one news report. But folks, let me just quickly tell you what their definition of a moderate is. On economic policy, he supported a 70% tax increase in Minnesota. Not 17, 70. He supported Build Back Better. He supported American Rescue. Those two are $3.5 billion. The Inflation Reduction Act, another $800 million. On immigration, he wants Minnesota to be a sanctuary state. He wants illegals to be eligible. He has them eligible for driver's licenses, in-state college tuition, and health care. On abortion, he signed a bill that legalized infanticide by repealing protections for children who are born after botched abortion. On public safety, he allowed the riots to take place in Minnesota for 4 days. His daughter was passing police information on to rioters. On climate change, he wants Minnesota to be energy electric by 2040. he supports California's crazy vehicle emission standards. On religion, he shut down churches during COVID.
Yes.
He opened the Mall of the
Yes.
America and casinos before he opened up churches. On gender wars, he wants Minnesota to be a sanctuary state. He signed into law the power of the state to take away children from their parents if they object to child mutilation surgery. Folks, it goes on and on and
Yes, it
on.
does.
He is the most extreme vice presidential candidate running with the most extreme presidential candidate. And in the eyes of the media, that makes them moderates.
We're speaking with Brent Bozell, president of Media Research Center. Thank you for going through that succinctly, but comprehensive list of just his radicalism. We're talking about Tim Walz. You know, Brent, I'm curious about how the media and social media will be playing in the 2024 elections. We talked a lot about the influencers being paid to promote Kamala Harris online and go to her events to generate this enthusiasm. But are there other areas that you're concerned about when it comes to search engines, algorithms, the social media algorithms as well? What are you expecting to see? What should we be looking out for?
Well, one thing that really frightens me is Google, and Google should frighten every American. If you follow what they've been doing in recent elections, without question, they've been manipulating algorithms against Republicans. If you're a Democrat, you love Google for what they're doing, which is constantly putting Republicans off of the first page. Why is this important? According to one Pew Center study that I saw from 2017, so it's dated, the numbers can only be far worse today, 6% of the public based its decision on who to vote for based on a Google search. So if a Republican or a conservative is dropped off of page one, and on page two is where less than 1% of the public goes, then that's very bad. Now, here's what offsets it. During the Obama years, the left dominated social media. Then came Donald Trump in 2016, and he used Twitter, and he won the presidential campaign in large part because of that. Then Twitter censored him in 2020. Had they not censored him, had Facebook not censored him, 100% certainty he would have won the presidency. Well, now Twitter has uncensored him. So it's going to be really, really interesting that because of Elon Musk, who is opening up Twitter to have an open conversation, when people can finally have that open conversation, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens.
You're seeing a bit of a pile-on right now, if I may, in a good way, on Tim Walz's military record. All of it, of course, is coming from center-right and conservative media. However, I have to say, CNN at least followed up on one of the charges against Tim Walz and said, yeah, it's completely false when he says he carried a weapon in war. Do you think this story will get some more oxygen? The fact, and it's less about Tim Walz as it is about Kamala Harris's judgment and wisdom in picking a person who appears not to have been vetted in any way whatsoever by anyone who knows anything about the military.
Yeah, and I guess that was my point to Patrice, that look, what you've got is a Swift Vote Vets 2.0 that is starting to emerge. You've got Walz's own military combat veterans saying, folks, he was not in combat. He did not carry a gun. And he's lying in his bio about what his status was. He wasn't command major, sergeant major. That's what he was until he retired and chose not to go fight for his country in Iraq, at which point he was dropped to a staff sergeant. Well, he still has that first title, where he had it for years and years on his bio sheet. So he was lying to his voters about what he was, lying about what he did. And if his colleagues in the military have anything to say about it, they're going to make that loud and clear. That's the kind of thing that can percolate, and that's the kind of thing that won't go away.
One last thing, Brent, about, as you've often pointed out, some of the most stark examples of bias is what the media ignore and don't cover. Is it still very weird? It's very weird to me that just 4 weeks later, we're not getting a whole lot of news about this There was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life with a bullet that came within a quarter inch of murdering him in front of the entire world. And we don't know anything about this would-be assassin, and we know the FBI And the Secret Service lied about a couple of things within the first week or two of the incident, and it seems like reporters who cover things like this don't seem very interested. Seems to me to be a pretty big story.
If I were leftist, I would want that assassination attempt to go away. So what happens? One, they have convinced 1 out of 3 Democrats believes it never happened. You've got and that's fed in large measure by people like the director of the FBI, who testifies that, well, you don't really know if it was a bullet that hit him. And of course he had to backtrack because there was so much outrage about that. But no, the media aren't going to cover it anymore. Anything they cover on that is a positive to Donald Trump. Folks are not going to do anything that helps Donald Trump. And so they'll just ignore this.
Wow.
Brent Bozell, Media Research Center.
Thank you, Brent.